and I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out.
Hey everybody, thanks so much for joining us right here on The Right View for a little ladies' tea. Tonight we are joined by Editor-in-Chief of the Post-Millennial, Libby Emmons, as well as PragerU's Alexis Wilkins. Libby and Alexis, welcome ladies. There's been a lot made of Donald Trump and tariffs. A lot of people getting hysterical about it. Here's the thing that I don't think a lot of people realize, Libby. When it comes to tariffs and what the American people are having to pay to import goods into our country, Donald Trump feels very strongly that things should be fair and reciprocal. And I don't think a lot of people understood that we are actually paying a lot of money for a lot of goods coming into this country. And all Donald Trump is saying is, okay, if we are going to be paying this much money to another country, then they should pay us the same amount. He signed a memorandum on Thursday directing the assessment of fair and reciprocal trade tariffs on all major U.S. trading partners. The memo tasks Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick and Global Trade Representative Jamieson Greer with evaluating the need for remedies to ensure balanced trade for this administration. So I think, Libby, this is probably ultimately a good thing for this country. But a lot of people are very nervous about the word tariff, which Donald Trump says is one of the most beautiful words in the English language.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting as well. And he, of course, has been talking about tariffs since winning the election. And even since before that on the campaign trail, this has been a big thing for him. Additionally, the External Revenue Service that he has to set up to collect these tariffs and to make sure that money is coming in. I think in Donald Trump, what we see is a president who is much more concerned with the bottom line and the bills that the taxpayers are footing than any president we've seen in a very long time, perhaps ever. And that's something that I think the American people can be happy about. He doesn't want to waste our money, and our money has clearly been wasted. And we have seen that repeated again and again. There's another thing, too, which is that so many of the administrations have looked out at the world from our seat of power and said to themselves, we're so big and powerful that we need to make all of these concessions. And Donald Trump says, these are our allies. Our allies are equal to us. We are equal to our allies. And so you should pay. If we're paying, you're paying. And I think that's that's sort of equity in action,
Absolutely. He says, whatever countries charge the U.S., we will charge them no more, no less, Alexis. And I think that sounds fair. Here's an example of some of the things that were not fair and were not equal. The U.S. tariff on ethanol is 2.5%, but Brazil charges the U.S. ethanol exports a tariff of 18%. You look at agricultural goods for most favored nation status countries like India, we charge them 5%. India's average applied is 39%. It's either fair or it's not fair. And I like, Libby, what you just said about how we felt like, oh, we are this big important country. We need to, do things to help out the other countries. We're getting ripped off. Alexis, America has been getting ripped off. We're not going to get ripped off anymore with Donald Trump in the White House.
No, absolutely. It's one of those things where when you look at the lay of the land, and Libby's exactly right, we've been apologizing for our strength for far too long, and it has actually ended us up in a place of weakness. I think that reciprocal trades in general sound like very common sense, exactly what we voted for, in my opinion. When you say to someone, hey, we should probably be paying exactly what the other countries are paying back to us. We should have equal tariffs. We should have equal fees for this. Someone would probably say, if you interview them on the street per se, they would probably say, I think we already have that. I think that's already legislation. I think that's already what we're doing. And the fact that it's not, and of course it wasn't under the Biden administration, and the fact that this is a new thing that President Trump is presenting to the American people as an opportunity for taxpayers to not just save money so that they're not throwing away their money on silly things as we've seen through DOGE and other aspects of this incredible administration, but it's an opportunity to become that strength of America again.
Yeah, and we want to start making things here. We want to export goods. We want to be the supplier of the world for so many things. Think about our energy. We were on the verge of being a net energy exporter and energy dominant when Donald Trump was in the White House during his first administration. You had Joe Biden fully reversing that, and it puts us at a place of weakness. There's no doubt about it. So this is all winning. You brought up DOGE. I mean, who doesn't want to talk about DOGE and winning? It just goes hand in hand. There's just so much that's happening. Apparently, there was $1.9 billion of housing and urban development money that was misplaced, and I'll put that in air quotes there, Libby, by the Biden administration. This is what the DOGE X account says. $1.9 billion of HUD money was just recovered after being misplaced during the Biden administration due to a broken process. A broken process, $1.9 billion. Okay, these funds were earmarked for the administration of financial services, but were no longer needed. This is the kind of stuff that I can't even believe, Libby, whenever we take a step back and we really look at the big picture and what's happening right now in our country. Think about all the money that we have just been flushing down the toilet. Thank you to DOGE. My question is, how is it that there are so many Democrats who are still fighting against this? Who is upset, Libby, about saving the taxpayers, at least in this instance, $1.9 billion that the Biden administration just allowed to just continually go into the ether? I don't know where it went. Somebody's pocket. Where'd it go?
Yeah, I love when Democrats and their shills in media say things like it's not that much money. It's like, it's not that much money. It's $1.9 billion. You're out of your mind if you think that's not a lot of money. And that sounds so tone deaf to Americans who, are still fighting with costs at the grocery store and all of this other stuff. So, yeah, I mean, I think that they all sound insane when they say that. And losing $1.9 billion should not be something that is permissible at any level of government. I used to work for a company that had a lot of government contracts, and the amount of waste was rather insane. Just when you talk about how much paperwork needs to go into creating an invoice, we would submit invoices that were 300 pages, or like all of these different kinds of rules that they had for what you could charge for overhead and what you couldn't, and how much money you would have to, you would have to go get that money or else you would lose it, and then you'd not be able to get it other times down the road. So I think that has a lot to do with what these officials and bureaucrats are doing. Like, oh, let's just put this 1.9 billion on this account line, and then no one will question it. And when it comes down to it, we'll be able to access that money. And in a lot of cases, I think this money is just changing hands on ledgers. And so no one really knows how much money there is and how much has been missing. And the one other thing that I just wanted to point out was last week, Elon Musk in the Oval Office was talking about basic bookkeeping practices at the Treasury that were not being followed. People weren't filling out like the memo line on their checks or saying who the money was going to or for what. And that is just a level of irresponsibility with regard to our money that cannot be permitted at the federal level.
Yeah, the truth is that is our money. That's the money we pay in taxes, and we expect to know where it is and what it's paying for, at the very least, Alexis. And so anybody who's hysterical about DOGE, being transparent about where our money's going, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. Here's a little Valentine's poem. I just want to read this because I found it very cute. I love all the things that they're doing. Roses are red, violets are blue. Today, DOGE and 10 agencies made 586 wasteful contracts bid adieu. With a ceiling value of $2.1 billion and $445 million in savings secured, a perfect Valentine's gift for all taxpayers, well earned and deserved. I love that not only are we doing the right things here and are we saving the money and we're figuring out where all the waste is, cleaning it all up, but they're also, Alexis, they got such a fun attitude about it and they're having a good time with it. And this must really irritate people on the left.
It brings such a levity that I don't think the left is, first of all, capable of, nor capable of understanding. We've seen them try to meme. We don't like it. It's not funny. They don't think it's funny. We don't think it's funny. Only the right can meme. It's just, it's a tried and true truth.
Yep.
But the thing about this is, anyone screaming about DOGE is probably someone who's hiding something. That's a very obvious kind of catch there. If you're mad that someone is shuffling through taxpayer dollars, trying to make sure that the American people are getting the bang for their dollar, then you might be hiding something. And the thing is this has really turned in the way that the system works under the Biden administration and prior. It's really turned into procedural government money laundering. And all that Elon Musk and DOGE and everyone involved is doing is going through those ledgers, as you said, and really sniffing out what needs to be there, what doesn't. And if you recall, which I know we all do, the left was screaming at President Donald Trump about his own taxes and about the fact that billionaires need to pay more taxes, and the fact that they thought that magically we could fix all of the United States economic problems by charging billionaires a higher tax rate, which we don't have to go through the math here. It doesn't work. And so the fact that they're aggravated that regular American people could have the opportunity to see their taxes, lessened or come back to them. We have as we mentioned, the External Revenue Service. Saving the American people money is just not what the top tier elite left is into. They're in it for themselves.
Yeah, Sarah Sanders, governor of Arkansas, last week, I think said something very similar, Alexis, which she essentially said, the Democrats are terrified about what DOGE and Elon Musk might find. To me, that's the only reason, Libby, anybody would get bent out of shape about what's going on right now. Either they're mad they didn't have the idea of doing it themselves, or they're worried that it's going to make them look bad because people might see that all of their money is maybe going to the wrong places and maybe some of these people had something to do with it. America is $36 trillion in debt right now. We should all want to save some money, and that includes Democrats. That's a bipartisan thing. On Friday, something else happened that I thought was really great. There was a memo sent out to all 50 states and their Department of Education saying that they had 14 days to remove all DEI programming or risk losing their federal funding, Libby. It's about time. The amount of damage that I think this DEI stuff has done to our future generations, the way it teaches children not to judge one another by content of character, but by color of skin and so forth, I think is absolutely terrible. And I think this is something that a lot of people were hopeful when Donald Trump got in the White House he would do. He also said that any schools who are mandating the COVID vaccine are also going to risk their federal funding. So this is all a win for America, for our kids, for the future generations. And this is something that Donald Trump said he would do. He's actually following through on it.
Yeah, I like to see this as well. And it's also key to note that Biden, in his first days in office, pushed DEI out into the country through all of the programs, through every federal agency, and made federal funding contingent on the implementation of these kinds of programs. The same goes for the gender nonsense, the critical gender ideology, critical race theory, all of that had to be pushed into schools. And one of the concerns that I have is that a lot of these schools would not have been doing this DEI stuff or the gender stuff if their federal funding wasn't contingent upon it. Right. And in the past 4 years, how much of their programming, how much of the tendrils of this garbage has really gotten in there and infiltrated every conceivable area. Under Biden, we also saw the Department of Agriculture say that they would withhold free lunches from schools that didn't allow boys to use girls' bathrooms under the whole trans thing. So we have had schools jumping through hoops for 4 years to remake themselves according to Biden's ridiculous, whimsical communist ideas. And now we're going to have them have to reverse all of that out. And I think that's a much easier ask to get all of that stuff out than it was to get it all in. And I hope that they can do that and that they don't risk their funding by standing up and saying, like, no, we need to teach kids that they're racist from 3 months old on. And I hope that the next president that comes in isn't going to go about trying to reverse all of this stuff again. I hope that we can take these 4 years and just be done with all of this stuff.
It's poison. It's just, Alexis, it's poison for our kids. All of this stuff is so bad for them. And it really is, to me, it's antithetical to who we are as a country, that we're teaching children this stuff. And I don't know how a society survives with this sort of mentality. I worry about that too, Libby. I worry, okay, well, we're going to make this change now, which is so necessary and can't come a moment too soon. But what happens in the future? What if you have someone come back in and decide that this is the way things should go? I really am hopeful that there will be such immediate change to our educational system. We are ranked towards the bottom in the world in terms of, developed countries. It's really sad to see where America's educational system is. Most kids are not even meeting standards for their grade level, reading, math, etc. And Alexis, that's very scary. This is step one to me. Step two is making sure that we get these schools back on a curriculum that actually teaches kids how to do work. And I'm just going to throw this out there. My kids are young. They're in first grade and kindergarten, but they've started bringing home this math homework. And what is this? What is this way we're teaching math right now? I don't know
ridiculous.
What
doesn't
the
make any sense.
Who came up with this? And if I could ask for one executive order from President Donald Trump, can we go back to teaching math the way it was before? I don't know who decided all of this. That aside, we have to get back to teaching our kids how to live once they're out of school, putting them in places where they understand how to exist, to do their jobs, and they actually are proficient in grade level standards and requirements, Alexis.
Absolutely. We're seeing a lot of the effects of DEI, and I know everyone's a little bit trepidatious to say that these things are the effects of DEI, but the way that the education system has gone in the last few years, the way that people have had to just accept what they need to get to meet a quota, to judge people by something that's a racial aspect, that we as a country, like you said, it's antithetical. It's something we decided long ago that we were not going to do, especially, just might I add, in the Republican Party.
Right,
we like to think that we're the party of common sense, and we are, and we're the ones bringing it back. So it's just, it's something that we are truly seeing the effect. It's not just outcry. We're seeing tangibly how these things affect our communities. And the fact that kids are not learning the things that they actually need to I'd say go to college, but colleges, of course, have also lost their minds, and we'll work on that too, hopefully. But they're not equipped to go into the world. I mean, I remember when I went to school, I learned how to write a check. I learned how to write in cursive. I learned things that would help me in my life and that I use every single day. I learned math, I think, the normal way. I'm not sure what this new way is.
Oh, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible.
Oh my gosh. But if we can just get back to how things were and equip kids for a optimum life, then I think that we're doing all right. But we have to get the poison out first. You have to walk back all these things. And I'm so glad that President Trump is doing that. Excuse me.
You know what's fun? For years, customers have been asking if MyPillow sells cross necklaces like the one Mike Lindell proudly wears every day. Well, guess what? You're in luck. They are excited to announce that Mike has partnered with a jeweler right here in the USA to create beautiful sterling silver My Crosses. You can save 30% today using promo code TRUMP at mypillow.com and click on the radio podcast square, or call 800-624-3945 and be sure to use promo code TRUMP. You can choose from the women's or men's style, and make sure you do it soon because this amazing offer won't last long. Just go to mypillow.com and click on the radio podcast square, or call 800-624-3945 and use promo code TRUMP. Funny is, I was making notes for this show last night, and my kids were watching a movie beside me, and I don't even write in cursive. I don't even know what you call this. It's like a combo of cursive and, just standard writing. And my kids looked at that and they were like, "Are you writing in cursive? What is that? Isn't that what that is?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, this is so scary." Libby, why did we stop teaching cursive, number one? And give me your thoughts on the new math stuff, because I know you have older kids. The whole thing seems crazy to me, and I feel like it's like a trick on the parents. Like, I need a tutor to come in and teach me how I'm going to have to figure out this math stuff so that then I can help my kids when they're going to bring home this homework. Because already first grade homework, and I'm like, well, I don't know what we're doing here.
Yeah, I did that with the tutor, and I was like, okay, you now have a tutor, and I'm sitting there trying to understand. I've gone to math teachers and been like, well, what is this? And then they explain it to me, and I'm like, well, why aren't we just doing it normal? Why are we doing this weird way? And every year, Laura, it's going to get more and more confusing, and you're going to get more and more infuriated. And then the Chromebooks are going to come in, because what they're doing is they're having kids read on Chromebooks, and they're not having them read full books. They have them read excerpts of books. So you never read the full Great Gatsby. You just read little bits and pieces of it. No, well, some schools will do the tablet. Some schools will do the Chromebook. A lot of this stuff was facilitated by the federal government during COVID. So schools grabbed all these Chromebooks, sent them out to everybody, and now no one can actually read a proper book. People do, the kids do math on the Chromebooks, and there are all of these programs and different softwares and portals. My son, to do his homework, has to log into no less than half a dozen portals to figure out not just how to do his homework, but where his homework is. You have to go through, they don't just write it down on the board and then you write it down in your notebook and then you go home and you check it off. You have to go through each thing. And sometimes the homework isn't even assigned until later in the day. You don't even know about it. You have to double check these portals. It drives me absolutely insane. The Chromebooks have to go. We have to get back to cursive. In fact, the National Archives put a call out for people who can read cursive to translate old documents that are written in cursive. This is where we are. Now, cursive, of course, was, I could go on about this forever. Cursive was a technological advancement, right? Because you don't have to pick up your pen and you don't end up with all of those blotches, right? When you're like writing in quills or whatever. And now people say that the Chromebook is a technological advancement. But what I keep thinking in my head is, if my kid's out there on a desert island, how's he going to SOS on a Chromebook? You need to know how to write it in the sand.
But see, this always takes me back to the fact that we're so overly dependent on technology. And I'll say it until I'm blue in the face. I continue to talk about this. One day there will come a moment where none of us have maps on our phones, and we're going to have to figure out how to tell where's north, south, east, and west.
Maps. You ever try and buy a map at a gas station anymore? It's not there. There's no maps.
They got nothing.
It's out of control. We are destroying ourselves. We're destroying our kids' ability to learn. And when you sit them down in front of these Chromebooks with the iXL and the iReady and everything else, I wrote about this for humanevents.com last week because I've just been so infuriated for years. I'm infuriated by this. The new math, the shoddy reading, the bad literature. I mean, just all of it, the stupid history that they're not even teaching real history. It's out of control. And it really is up to parents to make sure that kids learn the important stuff like writing checks, balancing checkbooks, going to art museums, appreciating music, because they're not getting any of this stuff in school. School is, and it's specifically doing it to the boys. School is beating the boys around the head and telling them, you know, you're worthless and there's nothing here for you. And that's the message that these kids are getting. God, we've been funding it with our tax dollars.
Yeah, it is so scary. So there's a lot of work to do, very clearly. Linda McMahon, you have a lot of work to do. She knows it. She knows she's ready for the challenge. Alexis, it all scares me. AI scares me. I think that people are so lazy. They don't want to do anything. You know, I carry around with me, because I travel a lot, I carry around an actual book with actual pages. And if I can get a hardback copy, even better. Yeah, it's heavy. Yeah, it takes up room in my bag. But I feel like it's important because I think people are our attention spans are so short. We're conditioning ourselves to that with the scrolling, with TikTok, with all the stuff. It's very addictive, and I feel like it really alters the way your brain operates. So I force myself to read a book, like a real book, whenever I can. It's going to be very hard, though, if these kids are just learning on laptops and tablets, and that's the only thing they know, to convince them to actually go back and read a full book like Libby's saying and all of these things. Maybe it is the best plan to send every state back, send it all back to the states and let each state decide how they want to deal with their education. That's what Donald Trump has proposed thus far.
I mean, honestly, it does feel like such a state issue, because then at least people have a choice somewhat of what they want to do. And even to go one step further, if people want to participate in a homeschool co-op, if people want to choose how their children are learning and what they're learning, then they should have the autonomy to do that. I mean, at the end of the day, we've been saying it for 4 years, they're not the government's children, they're our children. And parents should have the opportunity to choose how they are educated. And then going back to the AI thing for a moment,
I was so scary.
other day, and they were talking about kind of the same thing, the role of ChatGPT and AI in their kids, not only education, but their writing activities and maybe how they use it in their job. And, we were just discussing it. And it occurred to me, and I've read this several places now, that kids are starting to, even kids a couple years younger than me, like the ones that have just gotten out of college, they're not thinking anymore. And when I say that, I really sadly mean it. They think a question and they immediately go to type it into ChatGPT instead of critically thinking, coming up with an answer. Fine, you want to check your work? I don't know. That's your business. But they're not thinking anymore. And we've seen critical thinking taken out of schools. Of course, Libby mentioned the teaching of real history, understanding the world around them in a critical way so that we're teaching kids not what to think, but of course, how to think. And now these education systems have taken it a step further. Of course, they're all acting like they're dissuading ChatGPT, but it doesn't mean these kids aren't using it. Especially when these homeworks are so hard to find and they're all online. It's so tempting. You're on the internet. It's easy to just type in the question instead of go find it in a book. Someone said to me the other day that just takes too much time. But that was one of the ways that I read and learned things and really thoroughly enjoyed and wrapped my hands around what I was learning. So I hope that they return to the states and some of these parental autonomy things that this administration is working on really, really do fix this problem, because I'm concerned not just for the education, but for the way that these kids are even thinking when it comes to education. And ChatGPT.
There's a movie, I've referenced this before. It's called Idiocracy. If no one's seen it, it's not really talk about really critically thinking. It's not a really intense movie, but the premise of the whole movie is that a guy gets frozen essentially, and he wakes up like hundreds of years later, and people have gotten so stupid. I mean, society has just degraded in such a way that he was just kind of this average Joe, which is why he was chosen to be frozen in the first place. And he's the smartest person on earth. If we go down this path, Libby, I don't know what the end result is, but I'm very afraid. And we'll move off of education, but there's so much good to come of AI. I feel like we're on the precipice of, like ending cancer and finding really incredible fixes for things that, deadly diseases and what have you. The other side of it is that we really are, in a lot of ways, I feel like dumbing ourselves down, becoming lazier as a society. And should the, stuff hit the wall one day and we're all without all this stuff, we're going to have a real problem on our hands, because no one's going to be able to figure anything out. It is absolutely terrifying. Just to get to two more topics before we wrap this whole show up. Turns out the borders work. There was a San Diego migrant shelter that actually closed, Libby, because they didn't have one single illegal immigrant arrive at the shelter after, guess when? January 20th of 2025. It's really incredible. Here's the kicker for me. They say that they were promised $22 million from the government by way of what? FEMA. Remember when they told us that FEMA was not actually giving any money to the illegal immigration crisis to, house migrants and this, that, and the other, whenever people were getting, if they could apply for it and actually receive it, $750 in Western North Carolina, $22 million earmarked for the San Diego migrant shelter. But Libby, it's shut down because they have no illegal immigrants. That's amazing.
Yeah, so that's another 22 million that we can get back and use for something useful. Yeah, they also said that a lot of the reason that they don't have new migrants is that the CBP1 app was shut down. So this app where you could arrange for yourself to turn yourself in at some port of entry, get arrested and get released into the country and end up at the San Diego migrant shelter, that's no more. And so I think that's a really good thing that we've seen that shut down. We've seen illegal border crossings, like the encounters, go down to like 400 a day, 600 a day, something like that. When you imagine that they were well over 2,000. And in fact, Biden had said that he would only cut them off when they hit 2,000. You know what I mean? Like, this is out of control. So I think that we've seen that that's very effective. And there's been a lot of reports that people are turning back instead of coming, and that people are self-deporting as well. So I think that, that's been very useful program so far.
It's been working. Alexis.
Just say no. And then there you go.
Yeah. That's it. That's all you got to do. Just tell them it's closed and actually enforce it. It's amazing when you actually enforce our federal law. What happens?
These are just the original laws. That's the thing too.
This
like
is nothing
they just
new.
weren't being enforced. Yeah.
Nothing new. That's the crazy part to me, is that we were told for so long that there was so much that they were trying to do, but so little they could do at the southern border, Alexis. Just since Donald Trump has been in the White House in the year 2025, over 11,000 people have been arrested for being in our country illegally. These are bad hombres, as one might say. These are gang members. These are, the sexual assaulters, the murderers. In the entire year before, it was somewhere around 4,000. So over 11,000 already, and we're here in February. And last year, there were just over 4,000. So it looks like we're actually going to get things done and accomplished the right way. I don't think there's any question, if you ask people around the world whether or not the border into the United States is open or closed. Alexis, I'm going to guess right now they're going to say, "Do not come," to quote a famous person.
Absolutely. It is interesting. We have all the laws we need. It just takes a strong leader and enforcement of those very laws. I feel bad for the law enforcement that's been under the Biden administration for the past 4 years, because they haven't been able to do their jobs. I mean, they're sitting there with their hands tied, understanding that American citizens are being affected. And it goes back to the whole common sense law that's coming about. Of course, the Lake and Riley bill, that was the first thing that President Trump signed when he got into office. But you would think, I mean, that all that bill really says, and I'm not, making it smaller, what that bill says is something very important. It says if you have committed a crime, or if you have not that crossing over illegally is not a crime, but if you commit a crime, if you have a sexual offense, if you beat up someone, you're getting deported and you don't have the option to come back in. And the fact that that wasn't something that was blatantly understood under the Biden administration nor enforced is absolutely ridiculous. And it just goes to show those 4,000 people that they got last year, it just shows that they weren't trying. They don't care about the American people. The United States was for sale, and it would have continued to be, of course, under Kamala Harris if she would have won. So thank goodness that President Trump is in here giving people the action and the autonomy that they need to do their jobs and protect American citizens, because that's exactly what we needed. If we would have gone farther in the other direction, I don't know that we would have a country.
Yeah, I mean, and the law enforcement officers need to have that authority, and they need the backup from the person at the top, the president of the United States. When that person has your back, you can actually go out there and do your job. The past 4 years, they felt like no one respected them. They couldn't really do their jobs the right way. They were, it was such a mess. It was such a disaster. Last thing I want to talk about very quickly is, Libby, I don't think this will shock anyone. It turns out conservatives, especially women, are happier than liberals. I don't think that's shocking to anybody. New study found that liberal women are more lonely and unhappy than their conservative counterparts. Only 12% of liberal women between the ages of 18 and 40 reported feeling satisfied with their lives, compared to 37% of conservative women who said they felt the same way. It also said that liberal women were nearly 3 times more likely than conservatives to report experiencing loneliness at least a few times per week. And shocker here too, marriage rates also higher for conservative women. I mean, I'm not going to speak out of turn here, but a lot of these people do seem very miserable, Libby. So this was not surprising to me.
Yeah, I think that on the liberal side of things, there has been a lot of things that make you happy that have been completely cut out and that have been said to not have any value. Among those are church, marriage, children, close family relationships. And then if you look on the liberal side, you say, oh, no church is evil, apparently. You have women sterilizing themselves because, Donald Trump bad. You have women saying that they're never going to be with any men because also somehow Donald Trump bad. And then you have them cutting off their family members. You see a lot on the liberal side of people saying, I have gone no contact with my family, and somehow that's a really good thing. So when you take away all of your community, when you take away love, when you take away, love for children, when you take away planning for a future that is not based in your feelings on federal politics, you're going to find yourself shockingly unhappy. It's a value system that does not lead to happiness or the greater good or anything worthwhile for your personal growth.
Yeah, the other thing that I found interesting is, and I think part of this too, is that a lot of conservative women don't say that they don't feel like they're victims. And I think a lot of liberal women would say, oh, we're victims of this bigger issue. And that's why we're out here, protesting it in pink hats or whatever it is. I have really thought about this, and I'm thinking back in my life, and I had to work very hard in many jobs I've had over the course of my life. Some of them less glamorous than probably most people watching have ever done themselves. But I worked hard in those. I never one time felt like, oh, because I'm a woman, this door is closed to me. Never, Alexis. And I think that that's generally a mentality that more conservative women have, is like, okay, so people are out there, crying about there needs to be equality and this, that, and the other. Just go out and do it. Just do it and show up and do the job and stop whining about it. To me, that I'm happier because of that. But what are your thoughts? Was that surprising to you at all that they're more miserable on the other side of the aisle?
That is not surprising to me for a host of reasons. And of course, Libby, and absolutely everything that you said is so hit the nail on the head. Another thing that's interesting to me is something that they found in common in almost all leaders that have ever been interviewed and really compiling these stats. They feel like everything is their fault. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but the point here is leaders feel an accountability, a sense of responsibility. They take responsibility for their lives. They are not victims. It kind of goes back to the whole DEI thing, where the left has a trend of saying this person needs to look like you in order for you to think that you can do this. Oh, Beyonce is a black woman doing this, so you can also do this as a black woman. I say, if you see someone doing something, or if there is something that you want to do, you shouldn't need any invitation to go and do that. You should go out and conquer it. And I think that that's something we have on the right. If you want to go do something, great. Work really hard and go do it. And I think the sense of responsibility, and again, not counting yourself as a victim, is a huge part. Of course, family, relationships, isolation is not policy that you can base your life off of. It's really not. And so the community that's on the right and is promoted through the right, we promote family, we promote these values. It's something that you can predicate the rest of your life on. And it's not, again, protesting in the streets and being alone and sterilizing yourself just because President Donald Trump is, in fact, president for a second time. So a lot of these things are just common sense, but it does make sense to me that women on the right are indeed happier.
Well, this is a very happy bunch, and I'm very happy both of you were here with us. Libby and Alexis, thank you for joining us for another great episode. To everybody at home, as always, make sure you like, subscribe, share, and follow. And we'll see you back here next time for more of The Right View.
And I won't back down. Hey, baby, there ain't no easy way out.
Nothing is worse than being on a phone call that drops. Nothing is worse than trying to text someone and you can't reach them because your phone is out of service range. And nothing is worse than supporting these major corporations and companies who don't support us. That is why I love Patriot Mobile. They are America's only Christian conservative wireless network. They use every cell tower out there available to all networks so that they have the greatest 4G and 5G coverage nationwide, and they support the causes that are important to us as conservatives. If you go today to patriotmobile.com/Lara Trump and use the promo code Trump, you will get free activation today. Again, that is patriotmobile.com/Lara Trump. The promo code is Trump for free activation so that you can get a great cell plan and feel good about doing it.